Hello and welcome to a new top 10 timeless video. This time is for Bloomburrow, which I think the popular opinion is that this set is not really that powerful for timeless. And I think in this case I disagree completely, because I think it's like a very powerful set. Obviously not at the same level of Modern Horizons, because that set was completely insane. But I think it could be really influential and create a lot of new archetypes. Especially I think like that my first pick for the top 10 could create actually a very powerful one, like maybe top meta, maybe tier 1 or tier 2, because I think it's that powerful. And the list is dominated by really good blue creatures, which I think is the highlight of the set, and then some other ones which may or may not see play. But people are underestimating a bit the power level of Bloomburrow. And I think the main reason that people are doing this is because none of the cards really fit on the established meta, like for example Boros Energy or Show and Tell, and so I agree that they are not like new good cards for those established decks, but Timeless is a very diverse format and you can definitely win with kind of weird decks, like we do all the time in this channel. We really like brewing. So yeah, without further ado, let's get on to the top 10. So the first card that I want to talk about is Sunspine Lynx. This card has been very hyped up for the set, and I think it's decent but not amazing, but I think it's still worth a slot in the last position. So what does this card do? It's essentially a 5/4 elemental card for 4 mana, in which players cannot gain life, damage cannot be prevented, and when it enters it does like a mini Price of Progress. That card, if you remember, it does damage for each non-basic land. This is not that good, obviously, because it's symmetrical and it does less damage, but it's still pretty good. And I think the key thing here is that the fact that players cannot gain life is really useful against all the Guide of Souls and other, Solitudes, and there's quite a bit of life gain in Timeless. And especially I think the damage can be prevented. People are like really excited to use this against a person who has just tapped out for ring. They feel like very safe with their protection from everything, and then you play this and you essentially do like maybe 5 or 6 damage and just kill them with your creature. So I think it is a powerful card. I don't think it's probably main deckable, except maybe in like big red deck, but I think as a sideboard card it could be quite good. It's simple, it's elegant, and I think it could see some play, but again, I don't think it will be like meta defining or anything. The second card that I want to talk about is called Helga, Skittish Seer. This is a 3 mana 1/3, which has a lot of abilities, but the most important one is that when you cast a creature spell manual value 4 or greater, you draw a card, you gain 1 life, and you grow this creature with +1/+1 counter. And then you can also tap it as a mana dork. It just taps 1 mana in the beginning, but then it can actually tap maybe for 2 or 3 if you grow it. So I think this card, obviously it's tailor-made for the 4-color Beans Omnath deck, and I think you could make a variation of that deck and make it like a bit more unfair. I think playing essentially all the elementals except Grief and, well, Endurance, no, because it's not good enough and it doesn't cost more than 4 mana or more, and Grief you cannot do it because you don't have enough black cards. But I think you would play like 4 Solitude, 4 Subtlety, 4 Fury, and of course 4 Omnath, and 4 of these cards. So I think in this shell you would have like 8 bean effects. You have 4 beans and then 4 Helgas. So then you can start drawing cards like a madman, just evoking your elementals and chaining them. And I know you can also already do this with the Risen Reef, but I think the interesting thing here is that this card is better than Risen Reef, as in a vacuum, so it doesn't die to Bowmasters, it has a lot of abilities, the gain life is actually relevant, it can act as a mana dork, and the difference versus Beans is that you actually draw cards casting Subtlety. So again, I think you could make like quite an unfair deck with a ton of pitch elementals and this card, and draw a lot of cards, and it could be like pretty good. I don't think it will be like meta defining or anything, but I think it could be definitely like a side grade for that deck. In the 8th position, 3/3 City. This is kind of a Nykthos land, but it's not Nykthos. For 2 mana, you tap it and then you get mana equal to the amount of creatures that you have. So at first glance, this card seems like very good, like Gaia's Cradle, and I don't think it's that. I think it's a bit of a trap, because usually if you have like, I don't know, 4 creatures, 5 creatures, you're already winning, so you don't. It's a bit of a win more card. So I don't think it maybe fits in like elves or goblins or anything like that. But I do think there's like one specific archetype which could want this card, and that is like Eldrazi. And the reason is that we don't have Eldrazi Temple in Timeless, but I think there's an Eldrazi which fetches a land actually and can also remove opposing lands. So I think you play like, for example, 3 of this card, then 4 Ugin's Labyrinth, and then basically a more aggressive Eldrazi shell with a ton of spawn tokens, like the Nameless one, and then the Kozilek's command, and like a kind of a deck with which creates millions of, not millions, but a ton of Eldrazi spawns. Then I think this card could become viable, because if you choose Eldrazi and you have like, you know, 3, 4, 5 Eldrazi spawns, which is quite normal, then you can tap for this and get 5 mana, and then sacrifice the Eldrazi spawns and maybe cast like a 7, 8 or 9 drop like quite easily, and also, you know, overpower the opponent with your small Eldrazi's too, like the Line Breaker, for example. So I think this card has potential, and I'll definitely try it. I think it could be quite decent, so yeah, cool card. On the 7th position, our old friend Jace the Mind Sculptor. Once the terror of almost like all Magic and one of the most powerful planeswalkers ever printed, was banned in multiple formats. Unfortunately, the power creep in Magic has rendered Jace not obsolete, but much worse than it was before. And I have doubts that this card is actually playable in Timeless, because I think Ring is just objectively better than Jace. But you know, it's Jace, it has some, it's different than Ring, it has some specific applications. You can return creatures with his -1, so it can protect itself. Ring cannot do that. The ultimate is it was a common way of winning games before. You just Fate Seal your opponent with a +2, and then you just -12 after a few turns, and then you just win. So again, I'm a bit hesitant to say if Jace will have a home, but I think the only way this card can actually be playing Timeless is together with Mana Drain, obviously. So in maybe some controlist deck which can Mana Drain, and you get, you know, your 2 mana, and then you cast Jace on turn 3 or 4 with counter magic backup, and then you start doing your thing. Jace is a very powerful card. Like in a vacuum, the problem is that it costs 4 mana, and there are tons of good cards at that mana slot, but it is a very powerful card. So I'm excited to have Jace in the format. We will try it in some shells. Maybe it could also like be good with the power balance card, which is like the shifted version of counterbalance. So maybe a bit junky, but we'll also try that stuff with Jace. So obviously, cool card, very iconic, and yeah, let's see if it finds a home in Timeless. The next card is another old friend, Baleful Strix. This card, I think, before Bowmasters, it would have been like a slam dunk for Timeless. This card in a vacuum is like really good. That's why it was used so much in essentially all the formats it was legal, like for example Legacy. It's just a 2 mana 1/1, but it cantrips, then it also flies. It's an excellent blocker because it has death touch, so it's also an artifact which can be relevant for Delirium. So it's just a very good card. I think this card is good enough for Timeless for a simple reason, and is that this card pitches very well to the new flares, to Flare of Denial especially, but also Flare of Malice. So I think this reason alone, it will find a home in Timeless. I'm like almost 100% sure of it. But you have to be obviously like very careful of that your deck has a plan against Bowmasters, because it's the bane of this card. But you know, Bowmasters is the bane of many cards. Almost no cards with 1 toughness are essentially playable nowadays. It's a bit warping. But if it finds a home in this kind of Dimir shell, or maybe, I don't know, maybe even like Catonia Nightmare shell, it will be a very good card. On the 5th position, my pick for the wildest and the most unpredictable card of the set, and that is Stormsplitter. This card is crazy. So I know many people are like saying, okay, it's very expensive, it's like not good enough, and I agree in a sense, but let's first see like what this card does. At first glance, it seems like quite bad because, okay, it's a 4 mana, has haste, so can attack, just 1 power, and when you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you can copy it, and you say, okay, well, you can copy, that's fine. But the interesting thing here is that obviously the tokens also copy themselves. So if you can chain, I think the number is like 5 spells after you have this in play, you create like 32 Stormsplitters, which is more than enough to kill anyone. And you cast 6, then you have like, I don't know, double that number, and even with 4 spells, it's still a sizable amount of Stormsplitter. So again, I find this card very difficult to analyze, but also like super interesting, and I will be brewing with this because it's super cool. I think the way that you break this card is probably with Reanimate. Reanimate breaks a lot of cards, but in this case, I think even more so. So the way I envision doing a deck with this, with Stormsplitter, is essentially doing like a maybe Ragdoll Storm deck in which you get the Stormsplitters in the yard, and then you reanimate them, and then you cast, you know, Dark Ritual, Bolt, whatever, and then you just kill your opponent instantly. So it's like an alternative, maybe win condition to the usual Grape Shot, but I think it could be better because there's also like a very interesting interaction where you can cast the Flare of Duplication, that flare that nobody uses, for free, and you can sack the original one, and it doesn't really matter that much because the copies keep copying themselves. So you don't have to sack the token, you can sack the original, and then it makes things even more interesting because that's a free spell which will multiply again the Stormsplitter, and you can copy another spell with the Flare of Duplication. So you can do like a lot of crazy stuff with this card. So I think the power ceiling of this card is insane, like super high. But also the problem is the bottom is also like very low. Like it's either like hit or miss. So I don't know, we'll try it. It may be unplayable, but if we find a way to break it, this card is gonna terrorize opponents, like for sure. Very cool card. Really love the design. Props to Wizard for Stormsplitter. Cracking the top 4, Kitsa Otterball Elite. I think this card it's super good. It has so many abilities. Like we've come so far from the Merfolk Looter. So this is just 2 mana 1/3, which has Vigilance, which is relevant for the next abilities. It has Prowess, so we can, it's a good Prowess creature. You can grow it a lot, and you can do a lot of damage with it. And then the first ability is that you can draw a card and discard a card, which is good. And the second ability is that if you can pay 2 and also copy an instant sorcery spell if the power is 3 or greater. So you just have to cast like 1 spell, and then you cast the other, and then you can already copy it because the spell that you want to copy, Kitsa will already be 3 power. I think this card is just essentially very good. Lots of abilities here. I don't know exactly what shell I would play it. I think I would play it in the Mox Amber shell that we played a few weeks ago with the Legends, because this is a very good Legend. I think it could substitute the Magda. But yeah, you can imagine all the possibilities that you can, maybe in other kind of deck, you can copy a Treasure Cruise, you can, play a ton of Mishra's Bubbles and then keep drawing. It's also notably a Wizard, which you can also play Flame of Anor and then copy it. And I think copying a Flame of Anor, so just drawing like 2 cards and doing 5 damage 2 times, is just so much card advantage and so backbreaking that I think almost no deck can beat that. So we will play it with Flame of Anor for sure. So very cool card. On the 3rd position, Thundertrap Trainer. Okay, so I've seen some people say that this is an Augur of Bolas. This is not an Augur of Bolas at all. This is like 1,000, a million times better than an Augur of Bolas. So let's see what this card does. This card, first of all, it looks at 1 card more, and this is already like really important in terms of not breaking and in terms of, the card selection. But the other key thing here is that you can choose a non-creature, non-land card. It doesn't have to be an instant sorcery. So in Timeless there are a ton of powerful enchantments such as Breach, there are artifacts such as Mishra's Bubble, One Ring. It's really important. You don't want a card that just gets instant sorceries, but a card that gets everything but creatures and lands. This card is insane. It's also important to note that this card sacrifices to Flare of Denial, so I think many of you could create like a Dimir tempo deck or something with kind of this, maybe also the Izzet Wizards deck with this card, and it's great to sack to Denial, and so, you know, amazing card. Also in the late game, if you can cast it for 6 mana, it creates 2 bodies, which it's pretty good, and then you also look at 8 cards and get 2 cards. Man, I think this card is like very high quality, will 100% see play in the correct decks. So yeah, also very, very excited for this one. Cracking the top 2, a card that I think it's very, very powerful, but not in an obvious way. The first time I saw this, I thought it was like okay, but nothing special. But the more I think about it, this card is pretty busted. Definitely, like, I think the best copy effect in history, even better than the old Phantasmal Image. The key thing here is that you don't have to pay like X plus 1 blue mana. If you want to copy Bowmasters, you don't have to pay 3 mana, you just pay 2 mana. So you just have to pay the exact same amount that the creature that you want to copy costs. So essentially this is like, it could be anything and it just costs the same. I think it will have a lot of applications. The main one that I see is that it allows blue decks without much removal. For example, like blue-green decks, these kind of decks, which usually have to splash for Dismember to kill Bowmasters, which just wreck them, and they usually don't want to. And the thing here is that you can, for example, use this as your answer for opposing Bowmasters. These are just your own Bowmasters. If the opponent doesn't play them, then okay, you don't have Bowmasters in your deck, but if they play them, you just play this and that's your Bowmasters and you kill theirs. And besides, you can also copy a ton of super interesting stuff like Guide of Souls, Ocelot Pride, you know, copy even scammed elementals. Obviously also like your own creatures, and even at its baseline, I think it could be like decent as a, you know, it's a 1 mana flying creature, which is nothing special, but it can also sack to Flare of Denial. So I think also the decks which play this card will also probably play Flare of Denial, but super flexible card. I think the best clone effect in Magic history will have an impact, and you will see a lot of Bowmasters being copied with this card. That is my prediction. So yeah, very, very cool card. And on the first position, Dour-Port Mage, or however you pronounce this. Yeah, this card is I think it's something else. Okay, so it's a 2 mana 1/3, which when one of any creature leaves the battlefield without dying, this is important, you draw a card, and then it also has the ability to actually return your own creatures to your hand. So why do I think this card is the best card in the set and will spawn probably a new archetype? Well, the reason are like multiple. The first one is that, for example, when this card is in play, if you play the Shrieking Drake, it becomes essentially spend 1 blue mana, draw a card, because you can actually bounce your own Drake and just play it as many times as you have blue mana and draw. For example, you have 4 blue mana, you draw 4 cards. This by itself, I think it's like very, very, very powerful, because, you know, it's a 1 mana draw 1, which you can repeat and you can also be very flexible with. But the other reason I think it's really good is because I've already brewed a deck, which I think this is the deck which will maybe be like top meta in the new Timeless format, which plays the Primal Prayers. It plays 4 Dour-Port Mage, 4 Shrieking Drakes, and also plays the Greenbelt Rampager, because when you have Primal Prayers in play and you have this Dour-Port Mage, it's an infinite combo. You can just play the Greenbelt Rampager infinite times. You cannot do this with a Shrieking Drake, but you can with the Greenbelt Rampagers. You draw your whole deck, and then you win with Thassa's Oracle with the last energy that the Greenbelt give you. So I've already created this deck in Moxfield, and I will play it as soon as I can, the first day. And I think, yeah, the combo is like very, very easy to assemble in my experience, and the fact that you draw so many cards when you have this in play thanks to the Shrieking Drakes and the other stuff, yeah, I think deck will be very good. Again, I have not obviously tested seriously, so maybe I am mistaken. You know, in Magic, you really never know. But I am very excited for this card and that deck in particular. Yeah, super good card. It's also very good in other shells, which I haven't explored as much. But you also draw cards with Ephemerate, so I envision maybe an Esper deck with Solitude and maybe Grief and Ephemerate and this card. So you can draw a ton of cards when ephemerating your elementals. And also good with Philia, so it's good with essentially any kind of flicker effect. So it also has like a decent body, which, you know, doesn't die to Bowmasters, and you know, it's okay. And it's also a wizard, which I don't see like an immediate application in a Flame of Honor deck for this card, but you know, being a wizard, it's also like it's probably one of the most relevant creature types, so it's also very important. So yeah, awesome card, really good. We will be playing it and enjoying it on the first day of Bloomburrow. So we've come to the end of the video. I hope my top 10 helped you maybe spark a little bit of brewing juices there, and that maybe you're as excited as I am for this set. But very cool mechanics. Cannot wait for the 30th of July to come and start brewing some decks. So see you next time.